Confessions of a Real-Life Werewolf. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I never believed in the supernatural until that fateful night when I, a simple store owner in a town just north of Detroit, became a cursed vessel of pure terror. My name is Vincent, and this is the story of how I fell victim to lycanthropic werewolfism, all thanks to the local mob. I'm not a store owner any longer, though. I couldn't hold down any sort of job if I wanted to. The kind of lycanthropy I've got is a bad strain, and it gets progressively worse. Some people say that eventually, you just become the werewolf and you never change back. Of course, I can't say that with any degree of certainty, since I'm unaware of there being any official scientific or medical inquiry into my affliction. I'm 14 years into my werewolfism now, and I only have 3 or 4 days around the new moon each month when I even feel truly human anymore. I am in the home of a former girlfriend who lets me stay over during the new moon. I have her tell me about all the fads and trends that I'll never get to participate in, since I'm in the woods most of the time these days, catching and eating the rest of the woods in order to subsist and survive. I once dreamed of being a writer. I mean, sure, I took on the job of running my parents' store when they got too old to continue, but when it wasn't busy, I was in the back of the place typing away on an ancient word processing machine, if you could believe it. I was young and idealistic, and I felt certain that one day I would write a best-selling novel and be as famous and recognized as Wordsworth and Poe, or at the very least, Stephen King. Instead, I crossed the wrong people, and I ended up foraging for roadkill at 3 a.m. It's hard to find any time to write when those are your priorities. My sweet and wonderful ex-girlfriend urged me to write this down for your channel on the internet, which she subscribes to. I haven't actually seen what you do, but I may as well do as this angel of mercy has asked me. She is correct in pointing out that I may not have much more time to tell anyone about any of this. We both have accepted that each time I see her, it might be the last time. That's part of why I endeavor to keep the conversation light. I'd rather she tell me about, TikTok influencers than allow the subject to get darker or serious. Once one of us starts crying, then we both do, so we watch comedies together and that sort of thing. I suppose it might be best for me to return to the time and place where this all began, and my life became the living hell it is now. Back then I was in my 20s, running my parents' grocery store in Michigan. Running a small business by yourself is tough, especially when the weight of the world seems to rest on your shoulders alone. Our store, tucked away amidst the bustling streets, had always been my family's pride and joy. But as with any territory, there were certain powers looming in the shadows, ready to strike when we least expected it. The mob had slowly, over the years, sunk their fangs deeper and deeper into the veins of our neighborhood, leeching the life force of the area in the process, and ensuring that their orders were followed. One of their orders was that all store owners owed them protection money, and payments totaling over half of our profits were ordered to be paid to these characters each month. Now I had my cop friend that we'll call Officer Smiley hang around when I knew the mob was going to show up for their payment. Smiley was the most honest cop in the world, which of course eventually led to his demise, but we'll arrive on those shores a bit further anon. Well, my policeman friend couldn't be at the store all the time. To put it in the vernacular, the bad guys who now run our neighborhood sent one of their own to teach me a bloody lesson that I shan't ever forget. It was a moonlit night, the air thick with an otherworldly presence. I closed up shop, weary from the day's struggles, unaware of the ancient evil lurking in the shadows. As I walked to my car, a figure emerged from the darkness. A mobster named Marco. Yes, that is his real first name, but he won't mind me using it. as Marco is no longer with us. In those days, however, he was quite vigorously healthy. In fact, Marco towered over me, his menacing eyes glowing like embers, as he transformed into a towering, monstrous werewolf, right there in that dark urban location. I wanted at the time to think that this was some sort of stage magic, but there was nobody else there except the two of us. And what I saw next would cost a lot of money to recreate even in a movie. What I was about to see for the first time was a human being becoming a werewolf right there in front of my eyes, in real time, and with no special effects involved. Too stunned to move or even to think, I observed the scene before me in sheer horror. As my shocked eyes watched, Marco's bones cracked and reshaped, his body furiously changing and mutating until he stood before me as a massive, bloodthirsty-looking creature. The moonlight cast an eerie luminescence upon him, highlighting his sharp fangs and piercing, glowing yellow eyes. My heart raced, my mind paralyzed with fear, as his gruesome snarl filled the air. In one swift motion, Marco lunged at me, his fangs sinking deep into my flesh. Agony surged through every inch of my body, its grip suffocating me. The pain was unlike anything I had ever known, defying comprehension. As his jaws dripped with my blood, the curse was passed on into my very soul. I was now bound to the moon's eternal curse, a victim of lycanthropic werewolfism. My senses were heightened, the world around me a distorted blur of sounds and smells. The once familiar sense of my store's neighborhood now overwhelmed me, assaulting my nostrils with an intensity that bordered on madness. My body quivered with newfound strength, muscles bulging, as my human form mutated away, replaced by the monstrous manifestation of the beast within. From that point forward, my human life became increasingly more difficult to manage and maintain. Night after night, the moon pulled me into its hypnotic orbit, leaving me stripped of humanity, at the mercy of this insidious curse. Even in the early days, I transformed nightly for a week before and a week after each full moon. As time wore on, I began to change on even more days than that, and then, earlier and earlier each day. I had no choice but to become a filthy cur, racing out of the city into the woods where I now belonged. My jagged claws dug into the earth. My snarls filled the midnight air, echoes of pain and echoes of despair. I was a slave to the moon, a predator, haunting the very neighborhood I had once called home. The mobsters reveled in my torment, their punishment inflicted upon me as a stark reminder of their dominion. But as months transformed into years, the fires of my spirit refused to be quelled. Deep within me, a kernel of resistance ignited, fueled by the desire for freedom and for vengeance. For years, I prowled the streets, my nocturnal existence a constant struggle for control. The moonlight's touch beckoned, but within my tormented soul, there remained a flicker of hope, guiding me toward a path to reclaim my humanity. I scoured the land. I sought ancient remedies, and yet I never found a way to break free from this wretched curse that binds me. I am Vincent, the cursed store owner turned fearsome werewolf, and in the depths of my anguish, I now accept that I shall never find a way to tear down the mob's reign of darkness, or find even the slightest iota of redemption. Evil has triumphed. Good has fallen. I now see how evil this world is. I now accept that I am nothing more than a small part of that evil. It is now the new moon of the next month, and I will try once more to finish my personal narrative explaining my current existence as a werewolf. I know I should pick up where I left off, but since my return to human form, I have been thinking about writing you a clear and forthright description of what it actually feels like to become this kind of half-canine being. I started writing it last night when I arrived back at my ex-girlfriend's home, and I'm seeing now that it's written in the present tense. I didn't realize I was doing that when I wrote it, but it's a remnant leftover from how I think when I am the werewolf. There is no past or future then. There is only that one moment in time, which is also eternity somehow. It's just a different way of being, that's all I can say. So I'll leave this in the present tense, so that maybe you can get some of that sense of what it's like to be me when this happens. Here goes. I'm sitting here in the eerie silence of the night, with the moon's glow casting haunting shadows upon the barren landscape. I can sense the change creeping through my veins, the raw power surging within me. It's that time again, when the beast within me stirs eagerly, demanding to be set free. As dread seeps into every fiber of my being, I reluctantly brace myself for the impending transformation. It starts as a subtle tremor deep within my core, an unsettling ripple that slowly intensifies. My muscles twitch involuntarily, as if pulsating in unison with the moon's celestial dance. A cold shiver courses down my spine, not only from the bite of the chilling breeze, but also from the dreadful nature of what is about to come. A flicker of anxiety crawls up my skin, like insidious tendrils entwining themselves around me. My heart pounds mercilessly, as if it knows its sanctuary is slowly crumbling away. My senses sharpen, like a bloodhound on the scent, heightening my perceptions to the slightest rustle or creak. The symphony of my heartbeat resonates in my ears, drowning out the world around me, enveloping me in an orchestra of impending doom. The pain arrives. Oh, believe me, it does. And it's beyond excruciating. My bones crack and shift, reforming themselves in ways I had presumed unimaginable. A cacophony of snapping and popping echoes through the night, mingling with my now labored breathing and occasional screams, mixed in with whimpers. My teeth elongate and sharpen, reshaping the cavernous void of my mouth into the visage of a predator. A relentless pressure builds within my head, as if something ancient and mighty is bursting forth, tearing the bindings of my skin apart. My limbs twist, bending at unnatural angles, as the cartilage morphs and molds itself into new structures. A fiery sensation races through me, tearing through every fiber of my being. Muscles stretch and tear, fibers connecting and expanding with erratic violence, burning in agonizing transformation. My once supple hands curl inward, knuckles white with strain, morphing into huge, hand-sized paws, tipped with razor-sharp claws, ready to rend and tear. My senses surge forth, sharp as a blade. My vision shifts, becoming clearer, the world acquiring a surreal hue, as if illuminated by an ethereal glow. I can hear the erratic thumping of a rabbit's heart from yards away in the foliage. The very rhythm of life, an intoxicating siren song to my frenzied mind. Scents assault me, filling my nostrils with a cocktail of emotions: fear, desperation, and the primal stench of survival. The taste of copper lingers in my mouth, foreshadowing of the carnage that awaits. Not 1 inch of my body remains untouched by the metamorphosis. Fur, thick and lustrous, sprouts from every pore, engulfing me in a coarse cloak. It tickles and prickles, a reminder that I've abandoned my humanity for something far more ancient. My spine arches, changing my torso into a sinuous form. My legs elongate, granting me speed beyond compare, propelling me forward on the chase of blood and conquest. When the transformation is complete, I stand there, a monster of the night. As the moonlight bathes my new body, a surge of aching hunger unfurls within me. Hunger for the taste of flesh, and the fear that drips from my prey's trembling soul. It is a torment and a pleasure fused together, a duality that tears at the remnants of my broken humanity, reminding me that I am no longer the same. In this moment, I am a wolfman beast. I am a creature of transformation. Every recollection of my former self fades into darkness as I succumb to the ancient instincts that surge within me. My howl pierces the quiet landscape, a mournful cry of acceptance and savage triumph. It's here in this twisted state of existence that I roam the night, forever cursed with the knowledge that the transformation will repeat again and again under the watchful gaze of the dreaded moon. Well, that's what I wrote out longhand last night. My ex-girlfriend is now asking me to tell you about what happened to my officer friend, Officer Smiley, who used to protect me and my family's store from the local mob. It's a story that she thinks would be good for your channel, so here goes. I never thought that I, a fearsome creature of the night, would find myself back in the clutches of the mob. I mean, they had ruined my life, forced my family's store to fail, and reduced me to an animal, killing to eat and survive. The only bright spot out of all that was that I thought the mob would leave me alone from then onward. I was entirely incorrect in that assumption, and my path did in fact cross with the organized criminals once again, sometime afterward. Since these evil men had caused my werewolf problem, I had lurked in the shadows, preying on the unsuspecting, reveling in the moonlit chase. It all began on a sweltering July night, an eerie stillness permeating the air. I, unbeknownst to what awaited me, was prowling the dark streets at the edge of the town and the edge of the woods. My senses were heightened. It feels like you have a spider's nest of webs extending out in all directions, and you're issued an alert whenever there is something around that you can possibly kill or eat. I was fully immersed into the forest around me in that manner when a sudden prickling sensation alerted me to danger. I turned around, only to find myself surrounded by a swarm of men, their sinister grins illuminated by a solitary beam of light. Panic surged through my veins as I found myself swarmed by the gentlemen. It was clear they had captured a werewolf before, as they had a pre-planned counter-move to every action I took. I was quickly overwhelmed by the 6 or 7 of them, and they bound me tightly. The coarse ropes bit into my flesh as they secured a blindfold over my eyes. I was picked up and carried to a vehicle where I was thrown inside roughly, much as one might with a sack of potatoes. Helpless and disoriented, the world became a muffled symphony of sound and movement. The engine roared to life, and what felt like an endless journey began. The anticipation of my fate gnawed at my gut, a dread that was both primal and disconcerting. Questions raced through my mind, but answers eluded me like shadows dancing just beyond my grasp. The rumble of the engine eventually grew faint, replaced by the sound of footsteps coming around to the back. I braced myself for what awaited beyond the confines of my imprisonment. I was roughly lifted and carried inside by multiple men. Then the blindfold was ripped away, and I found myself in a dimly lit basement, the dank odors of sweat and despair hanging heavy in the stagnant air. Before me, on a stool inside a sort of a cage or a cell, sat my friend and protector, Officer Smiley, but the sight that greeted my eyes was far from familiar. He cowered, his fear evident in his hitched breaths and trembling form. I called out to him, but he didn't even look up in my direction. His despair mirrored mine, and he began gyrating spasmodically in a manner that I have unfortunately become all too familiar with. As I watched, poor Officer Smiley himself transformed into a behemoth of a werewolf. Disbelief coursed through my veins as I beheld his massive, monstrous form. His fur was as dark as the night sky, his fangs gleaming with a savage hunger that mirrored the mob surrounding us. The sheer pain etched across Officer Smiley's still slightly human face was unbearable. The transformation had robbed him of his humanity, mutating him into a beast driven solely by primal instincts. The mob taunted and jeered, and I wondered what was next on their sick agenda. My absolute worst fears were realized when they flung me into the cage. Slamming the door shut, the sound of metal clanging against metal behind me sounding like a death knell. My death knell. The beast within Officer Smiley twitched, the sheer intensity of his gaze freezing me in place. Fear mingled with a twisted sense of anticipation, for I knew the battle that lay before us would be one of survival. Friend turned to foe, man turned to monster. The line between predator and prey blurred indistinguishably. Our eyes locked, communicating an unspoken understanding. In that moment, the werewolf in Officer Smiley was not a fearsome creature at all, but a protector, a guardian, hidden within the depths of savagery. We shared a silent pact, an unyielding resolve to fight the darkness that sought to consume us. Amid the chaos and the mob's bloodthirsty chants, I embraced the madness within, feeling the transformation ignite from deep within my core. Muscles surged and bones cracked, my body changing into a mirror image of the monster before me. As the cage became too confining, we merely bent the bars and squeezed out, unleashing a fury upon that fleeing mob that can only be born in the heart of creatures born both to terrorize and to protect. In that murky basement, among the cries of men and our own relenting thirst for vengeance, the two of us emerged, triumphant. Beastly roars echoed through our domain, a perfect recipe of chaos mixed with a scent of fear and desperation. And within the pandemonium, Officer Smiley and I, united by our cursed existence, stood side by side, survivors in a world that hunts those who howl at the moon. Although we savored our triumph that night, we had not taken down anyone of real note in that battle. My officer friend was removed from the playing field permanently a very short time after that, and I fled deeper into the woods, where I hope those guys will never find me. I'm already feeling the need to go back to the forest and resume my life as that damned and hellish, mongrel-headed monster. I've scarcely been here for a day, which means the time I get to spend as a human continues to grow shorter each month. I cannot honestly say that I will ever have the opportunity to write another word to you. With that in mind, I would like to thank my parents, my friends, and the human race in general, just for being who you all are. I know that most of you are good people, and I don't blame your species for what that mob did to me. But I do suspect that I may be permanently vacating my position as a human being very shortly. Please don't take it personally. I don't really have a choice in the matter. Please don't blow the planet up, and also please try to stay free. Well, happy day and zippity-doo-dah. Our executive producer is Ron Barracuda. Please join me in thanking Ron Barracuda for making this episode possible. Ron has been a member for 34 months at the $7 level, and we couldn't be more grateful. Ron gets cool perks in exchange for his membership, including secret Dogman episodes that the general public doesn't get to see. Here to fill in the deets is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank? Thanks, Biggie, and thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.